All right. So, marriage, it's a big topic if you're going to be talking about adulthood because a lot of people in adulthood will get married at some point in their lives. So, why do people get married? When I was in college a million years ago, the prediction in the women's studies class that I took was that marriage was, a patriarchal system and eventually women were going to throw off the shackles and would no longer agree to be part of this kind of relationship. And yet, here we are 35, almost 40 years later, and marriage continues to exist. It may not be as common as it was, but it's still, on average, the most common pattern for adult people in the U.S. to, settle into a relationship. So why? Why is it still around? Why do we still have marriage? It is the most orderly way of raising children. Having, especially two biological parents living with their biological children, it protects the interests of the children. It protects them physically from new romantic relationships coming into the household. It protects their financial interests. Any children who are born in a marriage are considered the father's children, and so, or the husband's children, and so those children are financially protected. I mean, we just have like a whole legal system based on this notion, and it's really when you have the law sort of following along with what you're doing, it makes a lot of things a lot easier. You don't have to think about them; they just take care of it. Um, there are economic benefits for the partners even when only one spouse works. Um, when you have two married, it is about marriage because in cohabiting couples you don't see this economic benefit like you do with the married couples. Some people think it's because married couples pay lower taxes, but that's not actually correct. Um, it's because oftentimes with a married couple, you can wholeheartedly commit to division of labor, where you say, you know what, you earn a lot more money, and if you work and even could pick up extra hours or whatever, um, you could support us, and I could stay here and I could, make more meals from scratch, and I do the laundry at home, and we don't have to do it at a laundromat, or I mean, a whole bunch of things that are just little money sucks are not necessarily present in a married couple because you can divide that labor and you know that your economic future is tied together. You know that because it's legally tied together. And so in a study of the working poor, that is people who are working full time but earning less than the poverty level, there were single people in the survey, and they were faring decently well as single people. The people who were faring the worst were single people with children because there are costs involved in taking care of children that then makes this amount of money not sufficient. The people who fared the best were the married couples where one of the members was earning this, below poverty wage, but the other one was at home doing the work that would allow that wage to actually support a family. And so in the examples that they pulled out, the married couple that they profiled actually owned a home as opposed to their peers who none of them did, and one of them lived in their car with their child. Um, it's there's something about that marital stability that makes it possible to divide labor in a way that makes it much more likely that you can stay economically solvent, even if you are at that borderline of hovering around the poverty level. Another benefit of marriage is that there are, I have to laugh because I experienced some emotional growth just recently in my marriage because, um, you're both growing and developing, and if you're trying to work it out to stay together, you have to try and get back onto the same page and grow together and not grow apart. Um, so, we're going through a little bit of trauma in my household right now because my father-in-law just recently died. My daughter just had a baby 3 weeks ago today and has been having some difficulties afterwards, and that's been stressful. And so we're having a little bit of, emotionality going on in the household. And so, of course, when you are having difficulties out in the world and there's nothing you can really do about it, the best thing you can do is turn on your loved one and get in a fight, right? So, we've been struggling through a little bit, but we're growing together through it. As we talk it out and we work through what we're actually feeling rather than just lashing out with each other and stuff. And it might be easy to say, well, yeah, well, you have a PhD in psychology. It's way easier to work it out. No, it's not. I argue with him just like any normal person would argue with them. But if you love each other and you want to stay together, then you figure out ways to grow together, and you try and see each other's point of view, and you try to make it so that you're not having discord and stuff like that. And you have to grow up. I mean, it involves a lot of emotional growth. And I always like to tell my firstborn child that she's the one who forced me to grow up. And she keeps forcing me to, grow and mature more and more. But honestly, it started with her dad, right? Like, he's the one who forced me to start growing up. And it is this opportunity that a lot of times you don't have unless you have the security and the commitment of, being together. Like we have legally, bound ourselves together, and we have to at least give it a try and figure it out. And so even if you might storm out of the house and slam the door and, be all huffy and puffy, it's like, okay, well, that's still my house and I have to go back there. And this is the person who I, promised to love and cherish, and I have to work it out. I have to try it out. Now, I don't have to. If it was awful, then of course you don't. But I'm just saying, when there's disagreements, these are opportunities for growth. Please don't take anything I just said as advocating for like sticking it out in an abusive situation or something like that. I'm just talking about normal disagreements that, as a petulant child, you're like, come on, man, I want my way. And sometimes it's not your way, and you have to grow. You have to develop. The thing that marriage does for us, I think you kind of probably had that kind of bond with your parents, right? A lot of times kids think that they could probably do something that would cause their parents not to love them anymore. And I mean, I think all of us parents probably have some limit. I mean, I would like to think that if my child was Jeffrey Dahmer, I probably wouldn't love him anymore after I found out that he'd been eating people. I just, I'm kind of like that. But the thing that us kids feel towards our parents is that, they could ultimately withdraw their love, and that they're powerful, and that they could, like kill us or something. I don't know what kids really think. I don't know to what extent I thought that for real about my parents. My kids have told me, they're both adults, and they've told me that, when they were little, that I would say to them, there's, I love you. There's nothing you can do that would make me not love you. And they'd be in their heads going, yeah, I don't know. I mean, every kid's a little skeptical of that. So while we were secure maybe in our relationships with our parents, and if you weren't, then you really, the opportunity to grow within your relationship with your parents might have been limited. But it's not a reciprocal relationship when it's parent-child. I mean, you are not equals. One of you made the other one. I always like to tell my kids, I am 30 years older than you. I have like decades of knowledge that you do not have, right? Like they are younger than me and don't know as much about things as me. On certain things. Other things, they are the masters, and I will always ask for, like, what do these 3 dots on TikTok even mean? Like, there are certain things that I definitely, they are the masters. I acknowledge that. But, with parents, it's never quite truly reciprocal like it is with a person who you have chosen and you now have made a commitment to, and now we are equals, like we are peers. And we're trying to work out this, what should be just as stable of a relationship as what should be between parents and children, right? In that way of commitment and family. But now we're equals, and that has this extra layer of growth capabilities. And then the relationship's even more committed than the type of relationship even that we have with our siblings. I mean, I don't know what experiences you might have had with siblings, or if you even have siblings, but in adulthood, a lot of times siblings kind of will take each other or leave each other at times. If it's starting to get too contentious, you might not see each other for a little while. If you have a disagreement about something, instead of sticking it together and working it out and saying, no, my relationship with you as my sibling really matters, we have to work this out, you can say, you know what, I don't want to see you for a while. Just sort of disappear, right? Same thing with, I put lovers here, people who you have romantic relationships with, but it's not committed, right? So that there's really not the motive to work things out. So another benefit, another reason why marriage, I think, continues to happen is because it is associated with higher levels of happiness. In this chart, what we're seeing is on the left-hand side, those three bars are people who are married. On the right-hand side are those three bars of people who are unmarried. The teal bars are people who have kids who are under 18. The seafoam green is kids who are 18 or over. And then the black is they don't have any kids. And what you see is that for the married people, the bars are almost exactly the same height, for one thing, regardless of kid status. So kid status doesn't have a lot to do with marital happiness. On the right-hand side, you'll notice that for the ones who have kids who are under 18, you have a significantly lower level of happiness than the ones who have kids who are older or don't have any kids at all. The other big graphic thing that you'll see is that the married people are on average like twice as likely to report happiness as the unmarried people are. Here, if we break it down by sex, you see that again, it doesn't matter what your sex is, you're equally happy whether you're in marriage or in unmarriage, and almost twice as happy in marriage as in not being married. And then in this category, or in this panel, we have age categories. So the teal bar is 18 to 29, so young adulthood, or actually that's a lot of emerging adulthood. The seafoam is now people who are between the ages of 30 and 49. Black is 50 to 64, and then 65 and older is the white bar. And again, age doesn't seem to have much impact on the happiness levels of married people. But if you look at the unmarried people, it's only the people who are 65 and older who seem to be happier than everybody who's younger. And they're all, the ones who are 18 to 64, that's roughly half as happy as people who are married in those same age groups. So the tie between marriage and happiness seems pretty strong. It's not perfect. I mean, it's not 100% of married people are happy. Like, that's not 100% of nobody is happy. Like, that's not going to work out. What about marital satisfaction? Well, before I show you that U-shaped curve, let's come back to this little graphic in the bottom right and notice that the happiest people are the 18 to 29-year-olds in marriage. And then you see that the 30 to 49s and then the 65 and older are roughly equivalently happy. And the least happy of the married people are the 50 to 64-year-olds. It kind of overlaps a little bit with the U-shaped curve of marital happiness. What they find is that the least happy moment in life is around your 25th anniversary, and then you start regaining happiness. And if you look at the labels that are going on during the different phases, you see that with the onset of raising children and the pursuit of career, you start to build up financial burdens, you're saving for college, things like that. As the kids start leaving home, the couple starts digging their way out of that pit of the lowest levels of satisfaction that they've been having. They start to establish more fiscal stability as they're not raising their kids anymore. The grandchildren start to arrive. They retire, and then they have this second honeymoon opportunity. Now, something to notice is that this is not in reality, should not be a symmetrical U, because notice they've got 25 years at the pit, and then they've got 35 years at the right-hand peak. So clearly this is not to scale, because it's only taking 10 years to get back to the level of happiness that had been present 25 years before the dip. So it's not perfect. And also, a lot of people argue that it's not a real thing, that you don't have this U-shaped curve. But research, lots of studies have shown that marriages are harder while you're going through the hard parts of life. Like, that should not be a surprising bit of news. That, raising children is stressful. That trying to establish your career is stressful. Having financial burdens is stressful. And so these factors contribute to, lower rates of happiness or satisfaction that are reported on surveys. And then as things start to ease, the couples who stay together start to climb back out of that. And they report that they are happier, at 35 years than they even were on the day that they got married. My husband keeps saying the craziest things to me, like, you look exactly the same to me as you did when we met when we were 16. I'm like, you are such a liar. What are you talking about? But I mean, he still looks like the same person. I mean, I think he looks better, honestly. So, and I'm not lying because he's not here. I'm just saying it to you guys. Honestly, he looks better today than he did when I met him. And so I would like to argue we're at the grandchildren phase of the marriage. And I guess we both have, convenient vision. And I'd also like to argue one of the keys to marital happiness is to have a short memory. I mean, I mentioned to you that we had an argument the other day, and obviously I remember it, but I'm not carrying it around and thinking I'm still mad, right? It's like we resolved it, we talked about it, I think we moved forward, and, I don't know how else to express it. You have to kind of just move forward. I like to say you have to be like a dog every day, waking up going, "Ooh, a new day. Ooh, a new day," and try not to hold a lot of grudges. So, but this curve, I think, is an important thing to keep in mind with regard to happiness. Because if you meet somebody while they're in their, the depths of the curve, you might get the wrong impression about, marital satisfaction. So, anyway. Let's go ahead and stop here. We'll come back and we'll talk about gender differences in expectations for marriage. This will be fun.